Sunday, April 29th, 2018, Monaco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. So I'm in another room today. My wife's watching some TV in the study with Billy. So I thought I'd do a video in this different place. It's 4 p.m. London time. I played golf this morning, not too well. Weather's gone cold again. It felt like winter, even though 10 days ago or 2 weeks ago it got really warm. So funny weather. What am I going to talk about? Well, I'm going to talk about a couple of books. First, a new book that I just got in the post. The reason I got it is because I already have one of the author's book. One of his books, The Black Swan by Nassim Taleb. And the other day I listened to an interview he did with Ron Paul. Ron Paul's YouTube channel, I think it's called Radio Liberty, I'm not sure. Really interesting interview with Ron Paul. So I bought the book. It's called Skin in the Game. And he dedicated the book, I think, partly to Ron Paul. He dedicated it to two men of courage. It says here, Ron Paul, a Roman among Greeks, Rolf Nader, Greco-Phoenician saint. So that's the dedication of the book. And it's interesting. I haven't read it, of course, but I have a rough idea what it's about. It's basically talking about how the system that we have has insured or given like a put option to the establishment and the bankers and the people on Wall Street and the City of London, while the common people, the everyday people, actually don't have a free put. They actually have a skin in the game, so to speak. So I read here a little bit from the jacket of the book. It says, skin in the game is the ultimate BS filter and the engine of evolution. Do not pay attention to what people say, only to what they do and how much of their neck they are putting on the line. And it goes on to say, citizens, artisans, police, fishermen, political activists, and entrepreneurs all have skin in the game. Policy wonks, so those are the guys or girls that work for the Council on Foreign Relations, for the Brookings Institute, the PhD economists, I guess, the people that work for the IMF, Bank for International Settlements, all the central bankers. Those are the policy wonks. Corporate executives, many academics, bankers, and most journalists don't have skin in the game. And I think by journalists, he means the mainstream journalist. It's all about having something to lose and sharing risks with others. In his most provocative and practical book yet, Nassim Nicholas Taleb shows that skin in the game, often seen as the foundation of risk management, in fact applies to all aspects of our lives. In his inimitable style, Taleb draws on everything from Antaeus the giant to Hammurabi to Donald Trump, from ethics to used car salesmen, to create a jaw-dropping framework for understanding this idea. Among his insights, for social justice, focus on symmetry and risk-taking, minorities, not majorities, run the world. You can be an intellectual, yet still be an idiot. Beware of complicated solutions. So how does this book apply a bit to me, for example? Well, I'll tell you a bit more about my background, and always it goes back to your parents. I think my parents, my dad especially, always try to make me responsible for my actions. Always explain to me that you get what you put into things, that you have to be responsible for your actions. You have to accept defeat or failure, and then, take your tools back again and try again. I mean, I've said this before. Some of you might have heard. For example, in golf, Jack Nicklaus, the greatest golfer arguably ever, he won 18 major championships, but he finished second more than anyone else. Finished second 19 times. So Jack Nicklaus, he had skin in the game. He didn't have anyone to bail him out. He was in the sport. With me, I guess in 2012, the firm that I worked for in the city, they closed down my department, and I decided not to stay in the city, and I invested quite a bit of my savings into a business. I bought a franchise, a pawnbroking franchise, and I started my own shop near where I lived, and I ran the business for 2 years, and I learned a lot about how difficult it is to make a business work. Even if it works and you have customers and people enjoy coming in and it's successful, there's a lot of other factors like the business rates here in the UK, VAT, for example. I wasn't paying that in the first 6 months, but when I started making good profits from selling used jewelry, for example, I had to pay 20% on my profits of that. So that went off. Bank charges. I had a business account with Barclays Bank, and they used to charge me like 180 or 200 pounds every 3 months for nothing, basically, for charges. And I didn't really get why they charged me that. And also I used to have like a card machine for people to pay with cards. Barclays used to charge me 30 pounds a month. So the business went well. We were breaking even basically after just over a year, but I couldn't see it really making enough profit to be worthwhile. I was working on my own because I couldn't afford to hire someone. I was paying probably 10,000 pounds just to the local council of business rates, which could have been gone to someone to work part-time for me and improve the service. So I decided I was able to get out of the franchise, get out of the lease of the shop, and it wasn't easy. I had to swallow big losses, and the only plus side is that I didn't have to borrow the money to start the business. But I didn't have anyone to bail me out. I didn't go to anyone, so I had to close it down, and then I had to rethink. And that was, after that, it was around 2014, so I ran it for about 2 years, 2012-14. And I started looking again, go back in the city. I got a few interviews. I got an offer, and then it kept dragging and dragging, and I was given a contract. We hadn't signed it yet, and it just didn't work out. And then I started making my videos and doing other things, part-time jobs, small jobs, and the videos have picked up. But yeah, that's skin in the game for me. I can associate with that. I wasn't bailed out like Lloyd Blankfein was bailed out, or Citibank was bailed out, or AIG, or all the other banks, RBS. So I'm looking forward to reading this book, Skin in the Game. He's an interesting guy, Nassim Taleb. I think he was born in, grew up in Lebanon, and I've listened to him talk about how Lebanon was such a great place to live, and then all of a sudden in the 70s everything kicked off, and they've had basically civil war ever since. I think maybe now it's a little better, but it used to be Lebanon. It used to be considered the Switzerland of the Middle East. So it's funny how things change. Well, in the other book, I've talked about this one before, but I think it's always good to come back to this. I think it's one of the most important books that anyone can read, especially young people. It's What Has Government Done to Our Money? The Case for a 100% Gold Dollar by Murray Rothbard. He's a American economist. I think he died about 30 years ago or so. He was from the Austrian school economist, Murray Rothbard. And this is the kind of book that Henry Ford probably would have in mind when he said once that if the American people knew how the monetary system really worked, there would be a revolution the next day. This is the kind of book they need to teach kids in school. And what does Murray Rothbard talk about in this book? He basically goes through the regression analysis, which is you look back to see how things started, to see what things are now. And basically talks about how we used to have barter, and then it was difficult to exchange things because the counterparties might not have the exact merchandise or goods or services they wanted to exchange. And then eventually, through trial and error, the market and custom found the most marketable commodity, which facilitated indirect exchange. And that hasn't always been gold or silver. You've had conches, you've had salt. I mean, the word salary comes from salt. You've had cattle. In just after World War II in Germany, I think people used cigarettes as money. Adults, most of them wanted cigarettes. So it was a good, how can I say, marketable commodity. Everyone wanted it, so they could exchange it for almost anything. And and he talks about how the governments have hijacked the monetary system. They've basically killed the market system. They've monopolized, with the bankers, of course, with the central banks, they've monopolized with legal tender laws and with the monopoly powers of central banks, with taxation as well, which forces you to pay in their fiat legal tender currency. And they've made it how can I say, illegal or very difficult to use other currencies. And that's why they are so worried about cryptocurrencies, because cryptocurrencies is a challenge to the fiat money system. And I don't think it will go away. And it's not just the technology, the blockchain technology as well. It's strange to think that you could have different applications and they have their own currency, but it works. With like Steemit, it works. And EOS is one of the tokens that I like, that I've been putting some of my money into, and that's doing really well right now. But that's really not the point. EOS basically, they could dethrone Bitcoin and Ethereum, in my opinion, because instead of having proof of work or mining, EOS has proof of stake. And I think that's a huge benefit. It's more scalable, it's faster, you can do more transactions per second, a lot more than Ethereum and Bitcoin. And that's why I think if you look in the last few weeks, EOS has come to the fore. So I'm still positive about that, and I think it's a challenge to the system. And one of the reasons I like EOS was that the guy who wrote the program for it, the co-founder, the CTO, Dan Larimer, he was the same guy that started Steemit, and I've listened to him in the past, and I like his philosophy. He's a proponent of the Austrian school. He says he listened to Ron Paul, I think in 2008, and that changed his view on things. He's for free markets, voluntary activity in the markets, non-aggression, governance, not by the the guys in DC or at Westminster, but amongst communities. And I think that's why I like EOS, and I think it will do well. I could be wrong, but so far it's doing well. The problem is that with new technology, you could get something that could dethrone EOS even better. Who knows? I've spoken about Hashgraph, but the problem with Hashgraph to me is that it's not open source. So that's what I wanted to talk about. A couple of books. Skin in the Game. Seems very interesting. I haven't read it yet. Looking forward to read it. And What Has Government Done to Our Money? I'll put the links below in the description. I'm not sure if you can get a PDF for this yet, so you might have to buy it on Amazon. I bought this on Amazon, and this I'm sure you can get a free PDF. So if you enjoyed this video, please like, share it, subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. You can click on the little bell as well to make sure you get notified of my new videos. And you can follow me on Steemit, DTube, and on Twitter. And I'll talk to you tomorrow. Take care. Bye.